Episode 6 of Katarina had Garen and Katarina clashing against each other, with Garen believing that she was a mage, but before they could continue, a huge explosion stops them, so they separate to tend to their own responsibilities. By forcing a guard to fly her out, Katarina seems to have successfully escaped the kingdom, but not before General Gerodon shoots him down. And thus, we continue our adventure in Katarina episodes 7 and 8. The scene opens up with Katarina's father and Talon fighting a bunch of shadow clones from none other than Zed, using the last two of his daggers. Talon's and Marcus's survivability seems low, until Katarina blasts in to save the day. All seems good and dandy after the battle, except Katarina feels like something is off, with there being two giant ravens looming above Talon that he just nonchalantly points out. Katarina then realizes that it's her father that is wrong. Not just him though, it's also Talon. The general and Talon's tones shift and begin to attack Katarina. The general then transforms into a pseudo-Swain and squawks, which only then wakes her up from the nightmare. Distraught that the blade that was wielded by 7 generations of her family was broken, Katarina seems to feel responsible for its destruction. This is something I will go further in depth into later. Let's keep a bookmark on that point. Gathering a sense of her surroundings, she finds out that she has no broken bones, impossible since she fell from a great height, but just then the ground beneath her starts to shake. But it's not an earthquake, it's actually a giant slug that was responsible for saving her from being killed from the fall. But that's impossible since Demacia should not have anything magical in its forest, possibly referring to the petricite that is known to grow in the forest. But that is a mystery that is to be solved by someone who cares. This is way out of Katarina's field of expertise. The last panel for this section of this episode shows Katarina noticing some birds ahead in the sky, although they are not indigenous to the country. They are indeed Noxian. 2 weeks have passed, and we find Katarina back in Noxus at the shelter tea house with Drawn, where she asks what happened in the last few weeks that Katarina was gone. She then explains that her father was not actually dead. She was sent on a dangerous mission from General Swain to kill the king of Demacia. You know, not much has happened in the eyes of an assassin, she jokes. After a reassuring hug, Drawn asks whom she needs to tear apart, but the person in question most likely is not a Demacian. They might be a Noxian. Or at least whoever's in charge is a Noxian. Putting the daggers on the table causes Kat a great deal of pain, which Drawn jumps in to help her with her injuries, showing us that she is a hemomancer. Despite being able to heal her wounds, the weapon that broke is not able to be fixed. Her plan now after checking in on Drawn is to find out who was sent to kill her. Someone, possibly Swain, wants her family out of the picture as her father noted. Drawn opens a closet stacked full of weapons, giving Kat the opportunity to re-equip something that would help her in her investigation, and even suggests that Kat give her more blood so she can perform some sort of procedure, but is rejected. In the closet you can find the Infinity Edge, what looks like a refillable potion, and even the Elixir of Wrath. But instead of replacing her weapons, she opts to keep them, and thus ends this episode with Katarina telling Drawn that if Talon is the one who was sent to attack her, then it's time to settle an old debt. Overall, a really nice episode in the Katarina comic series, although less on the action-y side. We get a look on the world around her. We find out her friend is a hieromancer. We get the question on why there are magical creatures in the forest of Demacia. I wonder what exciting thing we'll see in the next episode. Talon PJs! Okay, so the next episode starts off with Kat breaking and entering her old home, or rather entering into a home that she is possibly uninvited, where we see Talon in his PJs.
Talon, you mind telling me what you're doing in those pajamas?
Kat, going Snuggie mode. I guess even assassins can be comfy in their time off. While she is talking to Talon, she's keeping a mental note on how Talon reacts to each of her moves, to his heartbeats, to even how he reacts to her giving a sigh of relief. It's then that she picks up the hint of Shuriman Jasmine and Noxian Honeyfruit. With that, she attacks, knowing full well that Talon was lying and that her father really was there with him. Talon explains that the daggers she had were his, and that he was the one that helped fake his death, and that he will be the one to replace her as the heir, just as their father wanted. As he is finishing his monologue of telling Kat that their plan is to kill Swain with their house daggers, Kat sneakily has the broken one from before up her sleeve and uses it to slash at Talon's face. With both of them injured, the fight ends. Talon, covering his wound, lashes out at Kat, accusing her of wanting to do that to him for a long time, but she didn't want any of that to happen. He was only a kid back then who followed their father's orders to turn him into the man they thought he was, which was being a child that he wanted. Even though Talon doesn't see it now, what he is doing is wrong by trusting their father, and Kat is done with all of that. Talon then screams out at Kat that she is just a traitor like Swain, but to her, What she was doing was protecting Noxus. Before leaving, she tosses the dagger into the wall next to him and leaves him to his anguish and pain. Back at the tea house, once again being injured. Again, Kat has been abandoned by her family, and that even some want to kill her. So what does that say about who she is as a person? There are monsters in the world, and that she is not one of them, Drawn explains. And as she is drifting off to sleep, Drawn shows her loyalty by telling her that she is in her turn. The next morning, Drawn suggests that she accompany Kat, but is turned down because it's family business, and that if she were ever to be in danger, Kat wouldn't be able to focus anyway. The final panels show Kat getting ready for the procedure that was mentioned before when she was first at the tea house when she came back from Demacia, and thus ends this section of the new episodes of Katarina. Now back to the bookmarked point that I described earlier about the broken blade. She was upset that she broke something that was passed down throughout the generations of her family. But in my eyes, she's not upset about actually breaking the weapon, that instead, this could be seen as a metaphor for her breaking herself away from her own family. Just something I wanted to throw out there. With how these episodes are being released, I assume the next 2 episodes are going to be the last in the Katarina comic, since next week on the 18th, the Mage Seeker game is going to be released, and I cannot wait to play it. I wouldn't be surprised if Silas was the one to help Katarina get back to Noxus. We'll just have to wait and see. I do plan on streaming it on my channel, so don't forget to like and subscribe, and of course hit the bell because YouTube stuff, yada yada, you probably know all of this. And with all that being said, I thank all of you for watching, and I can't wait to see how this comic plays out. Goodbye!